everybody. Good to be back with you. So let's talk about easy or positive aspects to have in synastry and composite charts today. And this is not a complete list, and it is not in order. It's just some things I threw together today. So we've got, let's start with the Sun in aspect to Jupiter. So the easy aspects is what we're talking about. The square, or the opposition actually is fine in synastry. It can be fine in composite charts. If you want to look at the natal personalities though, because if they're already prone to certain excesses and then they're keying into those excesses in the aspects between the two of them, and then we have this opposition, we can actually encourage each other to do things that's probably not really the best for us. But it's like, if say we have somebody who likes to drink, then we may encourage them to have another beer instead of maybe not, that kind of thing. So it can be negative reinforcements there in the composite chart with the opposition. All other aspects, the easy aspects, are wonderful in composite charts. They're going to denote friendship and forgiveness and openness and shared energy levels and values, sources of excitement that are very similar. And in synastry, it's really just the square that you want to watch out for, because that can lead to some differences. Sometimes ideological differences, that's something too that you have to look at, because sometimes it's not a big deal, that particular square for people. If you have two people that have kind of militant or fundamentalist kind of personalities, then that's going to be a problem. But the other aspects between Sun and Jupiter are actually really, really fun, and they're friendship aspects. They're not necessarily sexual. Actually, they're not sexual aspects at all. They're more about being influenced by some of the similar things. And there can be a lot of happiness and mutual enjoyment when we have the good aspects going on there, or the opposition in some cases. In the synastry, the opposition is fine. That actually is like really encouraging and really, really bubbly for two people. Moon-Jupiter aspects in synastry and composite charts are bringing two different needs together. Moon and Jupiter don't actually have a common motive, but they express very similarly. So when they are in aspect in synastry, the good aspects, you're going to have a lot of warmth. These are not sexual aspects. They are warm, open, forgiving aspects. And the easy aspects, not the opposition in composite or synastry. We're only talking about the conjunction or the sextile or the trine. The quintile actually can be a lot of fun. It's something that brings two people together in ways where the Jupiter person is going to get a lot of feelings of pleasure, adventure, excitement out of the ways in which they are able to grow with the moon person. Jupiter loves human interaction and the growth that comes from that. Moon is looking for safety and security, and so it finds in the Jupiter person this pattern of being able to feel like we can have those needs. We can have our vulnerabilities. We can express our real feelings, because the Jupiter person has a point of view of, I grow off of that. That feeds me in some way. So there's this openness of expression that happens for the moon person, and then the Jupiter person responds to that. But it's really the Jupiter person's output of I accept you, or this is what I want to feed on or laugh about or feel good about, is your feelings, that the moon person then responds to that, and then the Jupiter person responds to the good things that the moon person has got going on. A lot of times it is the inner planets that are going to respond consciously to the outer planet person. The outer planets are actually the instigator. They are the unconscious key turner to the interaction. And then the inner planet person picks up on that consciously, expresses that. Then the outer planet person is like, oh, this is interesting. I'm liking this. And then they move in and we have an interaction that begins. But it's very, very often the outer planet that actually unconsciously begins things, because they're the one that has this, I would say, the stronger projection of I want that. So the composite aspects between Moon and Jupiter are also very generous in nature. Not so much, we're not looking for the opposition, we're not looking for the square to be easy. Those can actually exacerbate the tendencies in natal personalities for overdoing things or for overreactions. That can make that a lot worse in a relationship. So the easy aspects just make it easy. It makes it easy to be together. We laugh at a lot of the same things. We have a lot of the same comforts. We'll be eating a lot of the same things. So there's just a nice ambiance that comes with these particular aspects. Venus-Jupiter aspects link the pleasure-seeking and the expansion of two people. They are almost all good aspects. The square between Venus and Jupiter can be a little bit iffy, but usually it's okay. And the in conjunction is kind of creepy. But other than that, all aspects between Venus and Jupiter are actually really, really good, because they show a lot of sensitivity to each other's values and a lot of willingness to see each other's point of view. So there's a lot of kindness and generosity that are also there, and also shared values, shared ideas about pleasure, materialism, excesses, pastries, all of that kind of stuff. We just really have a lot of the same kind of sweet tooth, you could say. So they go a long way towards providing a bit of a cushion in relationships, because there's like the sector of the relationship where we have just sort of an openness of acceptance of what the other person does or is about. So it can be, they can be a lot of fun, because we share a lot of the same artistic sensibilities when we have these aspects. And so we tend to pump each other's idea of beauty or art, or what is fulfilling or growth inspiring up. In composite charts, all aspects between Venus and Jupiter are generally fine. You do want to look at it in the totality of the chart, because if we have like some squares or oppositions going on, that can stimulate some over responsiveness. But generally these are all fine aspects to have, because they show how well we're going to be, you could say, blending the openness and the values between two people, and the shared ideas of pleasure and happiness. So they're usually all good ones to have. Easy aspects between Mars and Jupiter are productive, they are exciting, and we can be very effective. We bubble when we have these good aspects. The square and the opposition in either Synastry or Composite, not the most ideal. That's not what we're talking about today. But the good aspects are very much going to contribute to enthusiasm, energy, and inspiring each other very much. So we can feel like we're more energetic, we're more adventurous, we're going to take more chances when we have the good aspects. And it's really a lot of fun to have these, because they will wake you up, and you will find that you will do things that are really out of your comfort zone, but yet they're not scary, they're exciting. So we kind of become Indiana Jones as a couple here when we've got some Mars-Jupiter stuff going on. Aspects between Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, or Uranus, the good aspects, not the square, the opposition, lead to feelings of openness and liberation for the planet person, and growth, and new avenues of self-expression for the Uranus person. In composite charts, they can also be really, really good aspects, the easy aspects between Sun and Uranus and the inner planets. So let's start with the Sun. So when we have the Sun in good aspect to Uranus, Uranus is going to open the door to casual interaction very, very quickly. Uranus is something that the Uranus person doesn't realize they're putting out there. They're signaling that you're okay with me. I'm going to accept your modes of self-expression. And so when it's with the Sun person feels like, I get to be myself. I get to behave the way that I behave. I get to have my identity. I'm not going to be judged for that. And the Uranus person then responds to the openness of the Sun person as, hey, I like this. This works for me. And it leads to the Uranus person then being able to express themselves in some different ways, some new ways. So it can be really a good flow when we have the really good aspects. Square opposition, no, that's not what we're talking about today. In composite charts, it's showing the blending of energies, the blending of the openness of the identities, the goals as well. What are our mutual aspirations looking like? The personal goals versus the goals that are more about the vision for our life, and what are some of the rewards that we want to really get from life. So the good aspects are excellent. When Moon is an aspect to Uranus in Synastry, the Moon person responds in ways that are updated and fresh and unrepressed. They feel like they're allowed to have their feelings. The square and the opposition are not considered easy aspects in this case. But the sextile, the trine, the quintile can be a little bit friction-filled there, but also can be something that's very good. And the conjunction are wonderful. They tend to contribute to the openness of expression between two people, because Uranus is something that breaks down barriers that exist in the formal zone. So there's less formality or no formality when we're dealing with Uranus. We just feel like I am allowed to be in your presence and be who I am and feel what I feel. And it makes the Moon person feel like they are in the safe space with the Uranus person, because they're allowed to express their real feelings. And that can be like the greatest gift that we give somebody, is the gift of getting to be themselves. So the good aspects are so wonderful, because we don't have to jump through the normal hoops that we jump through to get to know each other. It's quicker, it's less formal, it's fun. So the Uranus person responds to the Moon person as enjoying the way that they are being open in their presence, and it encourages openness then in the Uranus person. So there's just a lot of basic acceptance that comes with the good aspects in Synastry. In the composite chart, the blending of the emotional energies and the needs and the impulses is what's being shown. The hard aspects, not what we're talking about today, the square and the opposition. The opposition is not considered an easy aspect in the composite chart. But the trine, the sextile, the conjunction show that there's an easy blending of our feelings and our impulsive responses to the world. And it's also showing how well we openly express our feelings as a couple. How well or how the other person could say stimulates us to share or to admit our real feelings. So again, they can be lovely, these aspects, because we don't feel like we have to respond any certain way. Like that is something that can happen more in the moment. With the good aspects between Mars and Uranus, both people will be urged to act out their egoic impulses without fear of being judged or rejected or labeled in some way. These can be very, very electric, energetic, and exciting contacts. The hard contacts are going to bring impulsivity and unpredictability. We're going to see some of that with the easy contacts too. That's why they're so exciting, because they introduce something possibilities, energetic possibilities. So not everything is known between the two of us when Uranus is involved. That's why there's an openness there. That's why there's an acceptance there. There's not an element of this must be this way, it's pre-planned out. It's not like Saturn where there's a big expectation, or Neptune where there's a massive expectation there. Uranus is about a non-expectation, and that's where the freedom comes from. So with the easy aspects, it's easy to combine our efforts and get things done. And it's also easy to take risks and to do things that are impulsive as a result of how we've affected each other. Aspects from Venus or Mars to Uranus, the easy aspects and sometimes the hard aspects, are going to bring informalness into the sexual relationship or into the sexual attraction. That's why Venus-Mars aspects are famous for being in the charts of affairs or in short-term relationships or relationships where there's just a lot of physical urgency. That's how they show up. They break down the formality between two people, and so things can happen quick and they can happen with more frequency and without warning. So there's a lot of good things about aspects to inner planets to Uranus, because they can throw a bit of something fresh, a bit of something unknown, and can also, with the Mars-Uranus aspects, show that our impulses are working together very, very well. They aren't working against each other. And that's really important, because if we have impulses that are working against each other, that can be extremely irritating. And it tends to be a very informal sexual relationship as well, with the good aspects between Mars and Uranus. And in composite charts, the good aspects are what you're going to be looking for, not the hard aspects. The good aspects are just showing the totality of how you blend your impulses and your energy. How do you spontaneously respond to things as a couple? How do you trigger each other? That's another one that we want to look for with Uranus Mars contacts. Even with the easy contacts, we're going to trigger each other in certain ways, but those are usually good ways with the easy contacts. With all contacts between Venus and Uranus, we're going to be making very, very quick assessments and judgments of each other and altering our normal modes of behavior. The hard contacts are going to be the square and the opposition. Sometimes the opposition can lead to a lot of attraction, but a lot of times we back away from that one. So we're just going to be talking about the easy aspects today. The sextile, the trine, the quintile is not an easy aspect in this case, and the conjunction. So there's a lack of formality when we have these aspects. We are usually going to build or jump into a relationship very, very quickly. And often, especially with the conjunction, even more so with the square, but we're not talking about that. But with the conjunction, it can be without really understanding what we're getting into, because there just seems like this door is flung wide open for us to begin interacting with each other, or even doing it. I mean, we can like know each other for minutes and then we find an airport bathroom somewhere. These aspects are so fast to have us having something to do with each other, because we seem to get what the other person is about right away. And especially with the conjunction or the square, we don't actually know that's the case until some time has gone by. And then we find out if our assessments, impulsive assessments, have actually been correct. But it leads to friendships and sexual relationships very, very quickly. Again, because we think we know what we're getting into. And there seems to be this almost uncommon link of you get me, and then we usually do. In the composite chart, it's going to be the sextile, the trine, and the opposition that are considered the easy aspects. The conjunction is not actually easy. That can bring difficulties because we are figuring out how our values actually really work over time. And they may not be blendable with the conjunction. So we won't spend a lot of time on that one today. The sextile, the trine, and the opposition are showing how there's an excellent meeting of our sexual impulses and material impulses, and how we are going to impulsively respond to things that have to do with getting our physical needs met. Our values are also our personal values versus our more lofty values related to Uranian things. What is our vision? What is it that we'd like to change or reform? Those things are blendable when we have the sextile and the trine extremely, so it's questionable with the conjunction. With the opposition, they're blendable, but they're different. So they're different, but they're complementary. So we'll see like people have actually very different personal objectives, but somehow it works out. And sometimes we see that they have very, very different careers, very different personal pursuits. Like we could see, for instance, what would we see? We would see like a waitress and a doctor, or somebody who's like a naturopath and they're with a neurosurgeon who's never read anything about nature. So you see very different objectives, very different pursuits, but yet you bring them together and they're complementary. They actually work for each other. So people would look at them and say, what are those two doing together? But it works for them because their differences are actually good. So one has the ketchup, one has the mustard, one has the peanut butter, and one has the jelly. They're not awesome on their own, but you put them together and hey, it works. Good aspects between the sun and the moon, both in synastry and composite charts, are no-brainers. They are awesome because it's linking the passive and the aggressive, the masculine and the feminine elements between the two of us. So the moon person feels that the sun person's behavior and the sum total of their personal expression is very much in tune with their emotional needs. Like what they do is what I need. And vice versa. The sun person is very much approves of the moon person's responses to the world, their emotional responses, their unconscious responses. That seems correct to them. So these are really good aspects to have. The square, not so much in the synastry. That can be difficult to contend with. The opposition can lead to some amount of stress, but it's usually good in synastry. And in composite charts, it's just showing how do your masculine and feminine tendencies, your passive and your aggressive tendencies blend. How are your inner and outer natures responding to each other? So the good aspects are really, really good. And the opposition is wonderful in a composite chart. The square is actually okay, too. If you want to stay awake. I mean, I had the square between the sun and the moon in my composite chart in the relationship I had with my best friend throughout the 7th and 8th and 9th grade. And that was the best relationship I have ever had. It was awesome. It had everything that a relationship should have. It was filled with warmth and trust and intimacy and vulnerability, and we had so much in common, and we were just such good friends. And the square can keep you keep your attention with each other. You will challenge each other to some degree. The easy aspects are just easy. It's just something that we feel like, for all the other difficult things that may be happening in the relationship, there's such a high amount of value that we get out of easy aspects, or even the opposition in composite charts between the sun and the moon, that we're willing to put up with whatever else is going on, so we get to feel like we're being responded to, or like the other person is responding correctly. Aspects between Moon and Venus can be wonderful because they're showing how the two most passive elements of your personalities are linking. So there can be a lot of just everyday enjoyment of things, enjoyment of the white noise that goes on between the memorable things that happen on a day-to-day basis. So we can feel like the other person has a lot of our sensibilities in common with us. Like they have a good sense of what we need, and then can respond to that. Like if they see us shivering, they may find us a blanket. It's simple. It's more, less attention grabbing how these aspects work. They are more quiet, but they are wonderful because we feel emotionally cared for. And the opposition in both Synastry and Composite is good. The in conjunction or the square are not easy aspects at all. Those will lead to friction, differences that you don't necessarily want to have to deal with. But the easy aspects are just about the passive, more feminine aspects of our personalities blending to be able to care for each other. So these are sweet, domestic types of aspects to have. Moon-Saturn linkages in Synastry bring together the need for safety and security. The Moon person is looking for that on the inside, and the Saturn person is also looking for that on the inside by building structures on the outside, becoming successful, fulfilling their potentials. So this links the safety and security needs with the ability to provide a lifestyle that is going to be the vehicle for those safety and security needs to be fulfilled, to be met. So there's a good blending when we have the easy aspects. The opposition is a good aspect in Synastry. The square in conjunction, no. Generally the conjunction is good. The sextile and the trine are very, very good, very easy. They actually don't even show up that heavily because they are so blendable. So the ways in which we're going to realize our security and success potentials are in aspect to each other, and it can be very reassuring. These are reassuring aspects to have. So if you have a lot of Saturn in you, or Capricorn moon, then you're going to like Saturn contacts in Synastry. And composite charts are showing the same thing. How blendable are our needs for security and the lifestyle that we're going to evolve in order to meet that need for security. So the hard aspects are not great. The opposition is very good in a composite chart. There's a lot of karma between Moon-Saturn aspects as well. We feel a certain fatedness when we come into contact with each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean, because there's some predetermined relationship that you're coming into. But there is a strong sense of responsibility towards each other and needing to take care of each other. So you see a lot of Moon-Saturn aspects in married people's synastry and composite charts. Venus-Saturn aspects in synastry and composite charts can be good. They have kind of a bad reputation, but they can be good because they link the material yearnings and pursuits and comforts of the Venus person and the abilities to provide that, the lifestyle that the Saturn person wants to develop. So they can be very domestic contacts. The conjunction is not considered an easy aspect. It's only going to be the sextile or the trine, that sometimes the quintile as well, that can be considered easy aspects. The opposition is a bit of a mix. For some people, it can be a strong karmic bond. It can show that we have different ways of going about our personal objectives, but yet we have what the other person needs in order to get the type of success or the type of lifestyle or the type of personal, material, or career social fulfillment that we're looking for. So it's different, but it's complementary in the opposition. The conjunction in the composite chart is actually good. That's something that shows that there's a good amount of blendability when it comes to our material yearnings and pursuits and our ways in which we're practically going to be able to bring those into reality. So how are we going to get what we want? That's actually really good. And the square is really the only thing that is not positive. The opposition is good in the composite chart. It's showing that there's, again, a good complementary blending between how we're going to get the things that we desire, the things that we want. So those can be very, very helpful in synastry and composite charts. Aspects between Mercury and Moon are often overlooked in synastry and composite charts, and they are extremely important because when they're there, they can be really good. They fill these spaces between what's going on with really good interactions between the two of us. And the Moon person sees the Mercury person as kind of a useful tool to having their emotions and their needs be met. So they feel that the Mercury person gives their feelings some kind of a three-dimensional quality. They make them something almost tangible. Their feelings get to be known by the Mercury person. They feel like the Mercury person is this this influence that brings the realization of what their feelings are really after into reality. That's what I'm trying to get at. So it can be very comforting for the Moon person, the good aspects. The square is really the one, or the in conjunction are the only two that you'd want to avoid in synastry. The opposition is good because there's differences there that are complementary, so we feel that comfort. We feel that the Mercury person is a good vehicle for verbalizing our needs, getting our needs out there, and then getting those met as well. And the Mercury person finds the Moon person's thoughts and responses, their habitual emotional patterns, to be acceptable, to be agreeable. So these are minor or I don't even want to say minor. Minor is not the word. These are less overt aspects that you're going to feel, but they are important. If we don't have them, that's all right. We can still get by. And a lot of people don't have aspects between Moon and Mercury, but it makes communication, emotional communication, infinitely easier when we have the good aspects, and we can talk about our feelings. We can talk about, the Mercury person can talk about their thoughts, the Moon person can talk about their feelings, and there's this really good exchange. There tends to be quite a lot of communication when we have the good aspects. And when we have the hard aspects, there's still going to be not the in conjunction, but with the square, we're still going to have a lot of communication, but it's not going to be necessarily good communication. With the easy aspects, though, you're guaranteed to have just lovely conversations, and it'll be a nice pocket of the relationship where you're just going to get to talk about anything and everything and feel like that's where a lot of the source of bonding and comfort and safety is coming from the conversation between the two of you. And in composite charts, it's showing how are your daily emotional routines interacting with each other. Are you irritating each other? Are you stepping on each other's toes with the hard aspects? Or with the easy aspects, we are enjoying each other's company. We're enjoying how the other person goes about their routines or goes about their feelings. Even if that may be different, it's not showing up as a problem in the composite chart. So, we may have some differences where, like with the opposition in the composite chart, maybe one of us gets up late. But that's okay because the other one works in the morning time and they work from home and they need the house to be quiet and they need privacy to meet with clients. And then, when the other person gets up by 1 o'clock, the day begins and they start their routine together. So we can have differences, but they can work for us, where if, the hard aspects exist, that's going to be irritating to the person who's working during the day. They would have this expectation that the Mercury person should be up and active or should be doing something because it's clashing with their own style. But so we don't have problems with the style between the feelings and the doings, especially the picky doings of the Mercury person, like the everyday things, the routine things. And the Moon person doesn't feel picked at by the Mercury person. They feel that they're just allowed to be as emotionally messy as they want to. An emphasis of planets in the 7th, 9th, or 11th house is very good in composite charts. It doesn't matter what planets are going to land there, unless it's Neptune coming into the 7th house. It's not the most ideal place to have Neptune in a composite chart. But it can be lovely to have all of the other existing planets, even Pluto in the 7th house in a composite chart, gives a relationship resiliency, especially when times get tough or there's outside pressures. This can be something that can show that we just link arms and go into the fire together and are very strong in times of stress. So even Uranus in the 7th house is actually a really good thing in a composite chart. So 9th house emphasis is excellent. Any planets coming into the 9th are fine. You won't feel a lot of the outer planets in the 9th house. You won't feel Neptune or Pluto, not generally. But it's showing that there's going to be a strong linkage when it comes to adventure, excitement, forgiveness, and morality and belief systems are going to be very in tune when we have ninth house stuff. 11th house planets in composite charts are excellent because it shows that we are friends first. And that gives us a really, really good chance of things going right because we're regarding each other in the right way. It's wonderful to have romance, but romance doesn't happen in relationships very much. The research only supports that it happens less than 10% of the time in relationships, and the rest of the time we are dealing with each other as friends, partners, associates. And so we better have a pretty good thing going on outside of those romantic spaces because we got a lot of time to fill. And when we have a good basis of friendship, we like each other, we enjoy each other, and we're much more apt to forgive each other for our failings and for the ways in which the other person hasn't met our expectations. We don't have a lot of expectations in the 11th house. We are allowing things to be as they are. So it's a much more realistic perspective that we have going on when we have 11th house emphasis there. First house planets can also be very positive. That is something that does tend to enhance our view of ourself. Not all the planets in the first house in composite charts are going to be positive, though. The sextile or the trine between the moon and Pluto can be really, really good because it shows that we are evolving and growing in similar ways. So rather than growing apart or having changes that we are personally going through or the relationship is going through cause stress, it actually causes us to grow more bonded together. All aspects between Moon and Pluto in synastry have their elements of difficulty. So we're not talking about synastry, and all other aspects between Moon and Pluto in composite charts other than the sextile or the trine have their elements of difficulty as well. So it's really just the sextile or the trine that if this shows up for you, you know that this is just an awesome, awesome pocket of resilience and of growing in parallel patterns. So the ways that we revolutionize each other's habitual emotional patterns are shown by Moon-Pluto aspects in synastry or composites. And this is showing that, yeah, you're growing and changing and evolving and having these effects on each other, but it makes you more trusting. It makes you more intimate. It makes you feel closer. And the ways in which you're growing together is like what contributes to that added closeness between the two of you. So these can be really, really good aspects. Aspects between Venus and Mars in synastry and composite charts are not emotional aspects. They're more physical or sexual aspects. They're really talking about how your passive and aggressive tendencies are behaving with each other, how they're blending too in the composite chart. So there's going to be a lot of attraction with all of the aspects except the in conjunction. The in conjunction tends to be awkward, and we tend to have very different timing with that. The square as well, we can have very different sources of timing, but we tend to be pretty hot for each other anyway, and we have the square going on, even though it can be a tense blending. The conjunction and the opposition are the best ones to have or the sextile or the trine, the quintile. Oh, that's a good one. Everybody wants a quintile between those two. It really leads to correct timing when it comes to our social and sexual tendencies. So things aren't weird. When one of us moves right, the other one moves left. There's this really good synchronicity between our passive and aggressive traits there. And especially in synastry, if the female is the Venus or the more feminine partner, because we can be gay couples and have these aspects as well. So, if it's the more passive partner that has the Venus aspect, or the more aggressive or masculine partner or male partner that has the Mars aspect, then this is even going to be better because it falls in line with the gender roles. We can have it be the other way, and that's awesome, especially if we have a dude who wants a woman who more takes control or is more in charge. Then, if she has the Mars there, then that can work out very, very well. Either way is fine. It doesn't matter ultimately which has which. It's just more classically in tune when the female has the Venus and the male has the Mars. And in composite charts, you would really all the aspects, even the square is okay. We are challenging each other, and we are definitely keeping each other awake. And it does tend to lead to a constant attraction. We don't tend to lose sight of each other or lose interest in each other because of the ways in which we're kind of stirring each other up. The opposition is like that too. Man, my parents have the opposition. They have the opposition in synastry, and then it translates to their composite chart. These people have almost been married 50 years and they're still making out on the kitchen table. I mean, they are so attracted to each other and still kind of gross about it because they're my parents. But it's really funny to watch people who have the opposition in synastry or the composite chart, especially in synastry though, because there's like this almost the sexual sparring that they do that becomes part of the relationship. It's part of the bond, is how we sort of challenge. Oh, yikes, I got a huge ant down here. He is huge. I'm just going to move him over there. Wow. So there's this way that we challenge each other with the passive and the aggressive tendencies. A lot of times we end up in the bedroom as a result of how we're eventually going to solve that challenge. So the conjunction is really good because we don't have any differences. There's a lot of sameness when it comes to those passive and aggressive tendencies. So our timing when it comes to responding and receiving from each other, initiating and receiving, is very, very much in tune. But that can lead to a little bit of boringness, whereas the opposition or the square always keeps us more on our toes because there's more friction there. So when you think of Venus-Mars aspects, a really good way to understand them is to visualize them as the actual sexual act itself. What is it that makes it pleasurable? It's the friction that's involved in it. So the more friction that we have between these two planets in the charts, it's showing that same thing. So the opposition, quite a bit, the square, quite a bit. The conjunction is not really friction, it's blendability. So that's why it can be something that can lead to routines in sexual relationships. And the trine and the sextile are very, very good. They're showing that it's just easy how we blend those two things. And they can act more like the conjunction rather than the aspects that create the friction, that creates the heat, that creates the attraction between the two of us. Mercury-Mars aspects are another thing that's very underrated in synastry, but they can lead to a lot of energetic communication, and also Mercury-Uranus aspects in synastry and in composite charts. That can lead to a lot of openness of expression and sharing of our ideas and seeing things in a new way. So you see in composite charts, when you see Mercury-Uranus aspects, we see a couple who's blending in a way where they're seeing something in an original way or approaching something in an original way. And the house that it's coming into is going to show you what area of life they're being original in. So it leads to a lot of mental and verbal openness. So it's very harmonious idea sharing, harmonious communication, and with Mars as well, the easy aspects to Mercury and Uranus in the composite chart. The opposition is actually good. We want to avoid the inconjunction or the square between Mercury and Uranus in composite charts. And in synastry, it's the same thing. It's going to be the opposition is actually really good, and the conjunction's awesome. The square's not so great. The inconjunction, we want to avoid that. The sextile and the trine, excellent. The quintile, wonderful. So there's just a lot of energetic exchange. And same thing with Mercury-Mars. Energetic exchange. The Mercury person feels like the Mars person in good aspects, easy aspects, opposition. We can have, I'm going to say we can have more debate, more things that are going to contribute to the energy between the two of us. But the really easy aspects, the sextile, the trine, the conjunction, we want to avoid the square. The real easy aspects are going to, they have the Mercury person feeling like, you know what, I'm going to be able to say what I want, and that's going to be accepted, and it's going to be encouraged. So the Mars person encourages what's happening in the Mercury person. And good aspects between Mercury and Jupiter, too, are really, really good. because we learn from each other. We talk about everything. There's philosophical discussions that can go on for hours. And the opposition is awesome in synastry and composite charts. Really, it was just all the aspects in composite charts tend to be pretty good, except the in conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, because they're showing energetic, open mental exchange, mental adventures that we go on together. And in synastry, Mercury, Jupiter aspects are about conversation and about talking. They're similar to Mercury-Uranus aspects. They're different. Jupiter and Uranus are kind of similar in that they both imply openness, invitation for exchange. They have their subtle differences. One is about belief, actually Jupiter, and Uranus is about liberation from that belief. So they function in a similar way in synastry and composite charts, but they're showing slightly different things. But they're so good to have, because if we aren't talking, if we aren't communicating, there may not be much going on in the relationship. So it's great when we can sit and talk about things that really interest us and learn about each other through good conversation. So I hope that was able to bring you a little bit more information or clarity on what some of the harmonious or good stuff can be between us in synastry and composite charts. You can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com, Facebook, social media at Truth and Aspect Astrology. And yes, I do private consultation. And please find me over at my website if you are interested in additional videos or content, because I have a subscriber option there now. So we have the live chat room, which I interact in regularly, and we do weekly question and answer videos as well, where you get to submit questions and I respond to them specifically in videos. And there's lots of other synastry and types of videos over there: Moon series, Chiron series, synastry series, other types of series. So find me over there, and I will be back super soon with more super cool videos.